Greetings, students. So we've kind of started the class by thinking about what could magic be, what is religion, what is science, but now we're moving in through the very specifics of what is magic, and we're looking at the specific context of magic in Greek cultures we've been doing up to this point. However, in this lecture, we're going to be looking at philia as opposed to eros. Philia gives a general sort of good vibe in men toward, presumably, for the most part, women or their social inferiors. So again, as we're thinking about magic, we're not just looking at the rituals. It's important to look at the rituals. We're thinking about the social context of our operator, the one who does the ritual, of what's going on in the ritual actions of the operation and the apparatus, if you will. And we're thinking about the targets and the victims and what is their social standing, how all of these come together to show how magic reveals a complicated social history of a time often far separated from us. All right, so let me share my screen and we'll get started today. Sharing the screen, sharing the screen. I need a mantra to share the screen. I wish I could just say, share my screen and it'll just happen. Anyway, so the trouble with philia. So again, we are in the world of Greek love magic. So while at this point, we kind of argued that eros is predominantly done by men to affect women. Women were their targets or victims. But in fact, Pharoné tells us that women were equally adept at a type of magic called philia or agape magic. Now, both words connote, why do I say connote? So we have two types of definitions. You have a connotation, which looks at the various contexts and ways that a word is used, the ways it changes, the way it depends on what the words are around us or the social situation. And you have a denotation, which is a dictionary type of definition. It's prescriptive. It tells you exactly what the word is normatively meant to be without accounting for a lot of usage. So with philia and agape, these terms connote a sort of affection in a spouse, a lover, or some other person to whom the practitioner is already well known. So it's not a general thing. It doesn't like make you generally well disposed or make generally all people well disposed unto you per se. What it does is it would make you as the operator have a man in your life, usually your husband, be well disposed and not angry. Now, this doesn't really inspire the desire to get it on and make a lot of love, though that might be involved in there. It's generally considered to have a different type of love, an absence of anger and a general favorability is one way that I put it. Now, all this eros, agape, male, female stuff, when we get to the last chapter, Pharoné, it's all going to get twisted around, and we're going to see that all of this is so much more interesting than we could even begin to think about. But we're really, in this case, looking at philia rituals of philia love magic that women use against men. Now, the victim, the target, will become docile and amiable. Now, it won't be an aggressive or a painful effect like with eros, but we have to remember at the same time, these rituals bind, dominate, and debilitate a man. They remove his anger, which is also connected to his sexual desire. They work in a thing like that. Sexual desires and anger work together in Greek culture. So by removing that anger and thereby removing their sexual desire, making them just generally well disposed to people, they're dominating the man. They're subjugating a man using artificially enhanced emotions of affection, which will lessen aggression and sexual or sensual passion. While eros, on our first point that we looked at last time, was meant to challenge the ownership of other males toward women, the ownership of other men's relationships toward women, these spells undermine the victim, the target's ownership of himself. His own wills and his own desires are tampered with. Now, the literary record and the mythological record and whatnot records a lot of common male suspicion. If there was that men would get really suspicious that their wives or their concubines or their mistresses would use spells to control them, to undermine their autonomy. And as I'd said before, autonomy and independence is the highest value for Greeks. Now, notably, when we're looking here, we're seeing a lot of spells that are called pharmakon, which if you look that up in our book, means something like magic potions. And regularly we'll see in these philia spells that the ingredients include narcotics. Now, bewildering and maddening and attracting spells throughout the world often use intoxicants. So this is another, what I've been calling a persuasive analogy. May the person who's the victim be intoxicated in their mind as if they had taken this drug that you use in the ritual. Or in the case of a sort of poison pill where you put sort of the magic in someone's food or drink, the drug itself, being an intoxicant, will have an effect. And that effect is thought to both enhance and to be enhanced by the magical operation. Now, when we're thinking about rituals, and this is a big point for me, we have to look at the whole darn things. So when I first started really studying South Asian magic in India and Sanskrit, I looked across the scholarship on South Asia and on South Asian religions, and there's very little on these magic rituals. And I didn't know what to do with it, despite the fact that I had all of these texts, so many of them, so few of them translated, fewer even looked at by scholars at this point. So what I had noticed, what was written primarily or entirely when they did write about these magic rituals, would be just the results. It was like the authors were just thinking about the results of the rituals. I mean, that was easy because they didn't have to figure the rituals out. They didn't have to compare the ritual ingredients. They didn't have to figure out the vocabulary and the complicated ingredients. They'd just look at the effects. They could figure those out. They could look at them together and be like, okay, these are the effects of magic. So they would also rarely or only vaguely speculate upon the social positions of the operator or the victims. So when we're studying the Greek magic traditions, we can see that authors like Pharoné have paid attention to every step of the ritual, the social component, the ritual activities, the ingredients, the effects, all of the above. So when I started studying these Greek magic traditions, looking to figure out what to do with the Indian stuff, I discovered a model for how to study Indian magic. So what I want you to be really clear on is this idea of imagination that I keep coming to. All elements of any ritual must be accounted for, and you need to imagine them. You need to imagine everything going on, the full ritual process, to make an interpretation. You have to think about the place, the invocations, the words, the ritual actions, the ritual ingredients, and sight, smell, touch, everything. And as you do that, you will see that important details in each part of the ritual will nuance not only the overall meaning of the ritual, but the effects. You can't really understand the nuances of the effects just by looking at the declared effects. There's more to it. We'll get more into this as we get into the Indian materials. So you have to look at the whole darn thing. So below in the text, I mean, and if we're just looking at Pharoné, if we were just looking at the effects, then all we would know is that there are some rituals that bestow charm and affection and others that dispel anger. But by looking at the full details, we see so much more. Who are the people? Why are they doing it? What is the point? What are the related rituals with different but similar effects? What are the traditions of rituals? What are the common ritual components that stretch across this culture and the cultures they contact with? I mean, honestly, one of the easiest ways to kind of organize a list of magic spells is based on the result. And that's fine, but you have to have the other details of the ritual. There's more to magic than just the effects. There's a cultural history. There's a social history. There's material culture. There's so much going on in magic.